Welcome back to Genome Design, where today we are going to do our Stage 2 engine calibration on this 718 Boxster. Now this shares the same 2-litre platform with the Cayman, so the tuning would be the same regardless. The only difference is this is a manual, so we won't be tuning the gearbox. If you had a PDK, we would recommend tuning the PDK as well. So the car comes from factory with 300 horsepower or thereabouts, and around 280 foot-pounds of torque. Typically our Stage 1, which means no hardware at all, would see circa 370 horsepower and about the same in torque, so 370 foot-pounds thereabouts. Now this car has had a downpipe installed, so it would be more of a Stage 2 tune. It's had some BMC panel filters put in it as well. So we're going to calibrate it accordingly. It'll probably make a little bit more power. We're expecting closer towards 400 horsepower. Torque-wise, I think we're probably going to need to sort of limit it around 370 to 380, but let's just see where we get to. Ultimately, I'll be building this calibration from the ground up, so it's a case of I'll do the first revision, get it to where I'm happy with. If we're not pulling timing or seeing anything untoward, then we'll go a little bit more. So we'll build it to a safe level, but where we're happy with it. Once we've got this done, we'll be able to release that as a production file into our dealer network or to retail customers like yourselves. So the first thing that we're going to do is check that the car is healthy from a mechanical point of view. So we'll spin it round, get it on the dyno, check all of its fluids, check everything's as it should be before we make a start on doing the tuning. So you've now seen myself and Andy run the car up and take some data logs. I'm using CMD Flash to program and take reads from the car, and I'm using Tatrix with a specialist data logger that we've got. Gives us as many channels as we want, and we can get really far into what the manufacturer's put in the ECU. So this ECU is actually shared with my 911 demo car, so I know it inside out. I've set up a bunch of data log channels that I wanted to see, but more importantly is the graph right over my shoulder there, so we'll show you this. I'm quite surprised actually, because this is completely standard, which is proven given the torque figures and the wheel horsepower figure. So we've currently got 280 foot-pounds of torque, or just over, which is exactly what we were expecting based on what Porsche suggest. The peak power, albeit, I mean, this graph is awful. I'm hoping that we can improve on this, because the way it's delivering its torque and power is not good, especially at the top here. But it does make around 280 wheel horsepower as well. So if I was to look at that from a correction point of view, circa 10%, so 280 times 1.1 is 308. So it's thereabouts. You're going to have a correction factor of around 10%. Given that we've got obviously a downpipe installed and the panel filters, you would expect for it to make a little bit more, but you can see how the peaks and troughs are here. Realistically, if you filled that gap in there, the car's probably making more around 270 wheel horsepower, which is a little bit less than factory. So, I mean, first things first, I've built a base file that we're going to put on the car, where I've made some minor changes just to see how it responds to the tuning, so that won't be the end result. What we'll probably find is that the tune that I've built will give it more everywhere, but the graph might still not look amazing. Once we get to a point where we're happy that what we've done in terms of power and torque, then we'll go in and we'll iron out any little bits and pieces. A couple of things that I must point out is our dyno is particularly sensitive because it's a hub dyno, so this is why manufacturers and sort of the larger software development companies use a hub dyno because it's very, very accurate. So if you were to put that car on a rolling road with inertia on the roller, you would probably find that it'd look a lot smoother than that. In reality, this is quite bad. So you would see something, but it wouldn't be horrendous. I suspect I would feel that if I drove it on the road. However, when we're finished, if we can get it better than that and tidy it up, when you see a really pinned graph on this particular dyno, that means you've got something that's absolutely spectacular. So anything with little bits of, you know, up and down, so long as it's marginal, that's fine, because as I say, on a roller you wouldn't see any of that, and you certainly wouldn't feel it on the road. But something that's as bad as this, I would suspect you'd be able to feel that if you know what you're sort of looking for. So that's the first thing to point out. Secondly, the other thing with all Porsche cars with the engine in the back, can be a little bit difficult to keep them cool on the dyno. This one's actually not doing too bad. We've got quite a cool day today. There's plenty of moisture in the air, and we've got some extra fans, so we're only hitting like 35 degrees charge temperatures at the moment. So that the ECU wouldn't intervene and pull back torque requests based on that. But once it starts getting towards 60, 70, 80 degrees intake temps, there are parts of the calibration that should pull the torque request back, and the car will make less power based on heat. So long as we can keep everything cool, we should get some really good gains on this, and then we'll then start to work on tidying the graph up. So we'll try my base file now, and then we'll take it from there. So a different day, a different jumper, so I must apologise. As you can probably tell from different hair, different jumper, we're a couple of days down the line here. So we've had an awful lot going on in the garage, and this has been going on in the background where I've been sort of developing the tune for this car. I'm about 5 files deep into it now, so I've spent an awful lot of time getting it to where it is. As we said before, the Porsche graph, so the OEM stock graph was awful. It took me a really, really long time to sort all the torque control out and all the boost settings to make sure that we got a graph which you can see here is beautiful in terms of how straight it is, how there's no big dips in it or anything like that. I must reiterate, to get a graph that looks like this on a hub dyno, which is so sensitive, if you put that on a rolling road, it's going to look like it's almost too perfect. But I literally have put days and days of my time into rebuilding the hull, of how the map is controlled, how the torque control works, how the boost control works. I've had to basically do an awful lot more than what we would usually have to do, and I wanted to get it perfect. So as you can see here, we've managed to make just short of 360 wheel horsepower, which, based on the rundown calculations from stock, if you add the 13% to get the stock figure to what Porsche quote to my figure, we're over 400 horsepower now. We're pushing towards 410. We've settled at 355 foot-pounds. Now the reason for that, because I was hopeful that we might be able to run a little bit more boost low down. Unfortunately, if you try to lift it any higher, I mean, we're at 1.8 bar now, which is where I'm happy with, and that's peak. It goes 1.8 down to 1.3 bar, so we're not overspeeding the turbo at the top. Any more than that, we start running towards some surge issues at low RPM. So as it starts to come on boost, you start getting a little bit of surge. It's just not worth, for the extra 20 foot-pounds of torque that we'd make on this car, it's not worth pushing it. It's happiest at this level. That's not to say if it had a proper sports cat rather than an empty, you know, exhaust system, and the stock exhaust system is on there. So I must reiterate, yes, this is essentially a stock exhaust system without the cat in it, because the car is used for off-road purposes only. So there are some restrictions in the stock exhaust system. We can see that the pipework is squashed in places. I genuinely believe, as we've seen in the past, if we ran with a Miltech or a Super Sprint Sports Cat and an exhaust system, I think we'd probably be able to run a little bit more low down. I think it's back pressure that's causing the surge. So ultimately, we've managed to settle on something that I'm really, really happy with. I mean, in terms of how much work's gone into it, it's difficult to explain without showing somebody, but it's literally days of work to get it to look like that. So what I'm going to do now is 6 back-to-back pulls just to make sure it's super consistent. Once I've done that, we'll get it on the ground and we'll go and have a little drive in it. So we've now delivered the Boxster back to the customer. He was in a rush to get away, but we've since heard from him and he's absolutely in love with it. If you're interested in getting your Boxster or Cayman 718 tuned, you can follow the link in the description below, or you can reach out to one of our team to discuss any tuning options that you've seen today. We are looking at stage 3 at some point, but that's probably going to be in the new year. As you can see behind me, we've got a few other cars that have come in for various different developments and tuning. The turbo is going to be going for big power and full new suspension setup. The GT3 RS is in for stage 2 with us. He's put some pretty trick bits on there, so it'd be worth subscribing to the channel and following us to get some updates on these cars in the future. We're going to try and get full videos of these done. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed everything that you've seen, and we will see you on the next one, which is likely to be the GT3 RS.